Welcome back to the 5 YouTube channel. Joe, Game Week 2 is officially now done. We're going to be looking ahead mainly on this show to Game Week 3. But just first, I want to start with one thing, one thing only. You said on the last show that you were going to captain Gabriel Jesus. I told you, one rule in FPL, go with your gut.
I know.
And what did you do?
Painful. Bottled it. Literally, I had Gabriel Jesus captained up to the deadline, and then everybody was saying to me, oh, Haaland, Bournemouth. I bottled it. I put Haaland as captain, and obviously 8 touches in 90 minutes. So
I'm so
typical.
sorry, I shouldn't laugh. But, so from now on, what are you going to do?
Yeah, because that's twice in a row I've done this now. I think on the first week I said I might triple captain Salah. Yeah. Didn't do it. He obviously smashed it. And then second week, said I was going to captain Jesus over Haaland, bottled it, and Jesus smashed it. So I think I need to start trusting myself a little bit more. How was your team for the second week?
It was okay. I think I got just above average. I captained Haaland. I've still got a few players in my team now that I do want to get rid of, which we will get into later on in the show. But I'm thinking of bringing players in that everyone else has got. So I'm going to struggle to like sort of make ground on people. But this always happens. Whenever I do an FPL team, I always hate my team. And by the third week, I'm wildcarding. So I don't think I'm going to wildcard just yet.
It's not the worst idea, though, wildcarding early, because you have free transfers, an unlimited amount of free transfers after the World Cup. Yeah. So you do want to use your wildcard fairly early, at least pre-World Cup. Yeah. But before we get into that, let's have a look at the leaderboard. Yeah, I mean, there's some absolutely monster performances this week, by the way. Kelvin, 181 total points, 102... point game week.
That is ridiculous. Like, how do you get 181?
That's incredible.
In 2 game weeks?
Kelvin is approaching the top 10,000 in the world, which is unbelievable. Moss at the wheel as well. Very impressive. 180. Must have had a massive first game week. Schleigo 178 and Madeline at 1782. So, I mean, some of the performances in the 5 Fantasy League are like challenging top of the world right now. I
literally, like, my aim across the season is to hit 100 points like once or twice. Yeah. And the fact that people are doing it in the second game week is just out of this world. So yeah, fair play to those, even the people that are in the top 10. So it's now time to have a look at some selected price fallers in FPL. And it is no surprise that top of the list, Joe, is Darwin Núñez. Now, he obviously started the season when he came in at 9. He went up to 9.1 ahead of game week 2 because everyone was transferring him in for this Liverpool versus Crystal Palace fixture, because he came off the bench, didn't he, against Fulham, and just looked unbelievable. And then he did what he did, and now he's back out of everyone's teams because he's banned for 3 games.
Yeah, and obviously people will be transferring him out in mass, which is totally fair enough, given that Wacky Manderson destroyed him and he turned and had to headbutt him. A little bit rash, Darwin, a little bit rash, but I think some of the other ones here are actually slightly more interesting than Darwin, because obviously everybody's going to take him out of the team because of the 3-game ban. But the bottom 2, Matty Cash and Leon Bailey, I think around 12-13% ownership. I am agreeing here. I'm going to be binning Leon Bailey. I'm too worried about the rotation in that forward line. Danny Ings looked really good at the weekend. Watkins there, Coutinho. Buendia looked good when he came off the bench as well. I just think you can't risk having Leon Bailey in the team if he's going to be a rotation option.
I think it was really interesting. Like at the start of the season, a lot of people, I actually would like to see his ownership actually like ahead of game week 1, because I think a lot of people had him because he was in that £5.5 million price bracket where if you needed the big boys, you had to have a couple of those players.
Had such a good preseason as well.
And that's why everyone went for him. I mean, I'm in the Matty Cash. I have Matty Cash, and he came off, didn't he, in that game against Everton, got injured, so I don't know if he's going to be fit for their next game. So I'm in the boat that I'm taking out Matty Cash, and you're in the boat that you're taking out Leon Bailey. Is there anyone you're looking at already? Because he's not expensive, Leon Bailey. So who are you looking at to bring in? Do you know?
It's a problem. Well, I've got Kieran Trippier in my defensive line. I think I'm going to be dropping Kieran Trippier this week. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, and that should free up some funds. But should we talk about some price rises as well? Players in high demand, Arsenal players. Yeah. Everybody wants an Arsenal player. And if you haven't had Martinelli in your team already at 6 before this price rise, what were you doing?
Is this a dig?
What were you doing?
At the start of the season, I was like, I don't want, like, there's no point having a team that everyone else has. I mean, in hindsight, in hindsight, Joe, it was probably a bad decision by me picking Marcus Rashford.
Yeah, I reckon it might have been.
And now I'm regretting it, and now I'm thinking of taking out Marcus Rashford and putting in Martinelli, especially because of Arsenal's fixtures. And he is so cheap. But I mean, Gabriel Jesus on this show this time last week, he was one of the most transferred out players. And we couldn't get our heads around why. And then he goes and does that. And they have Bournemouth away this weekend. So potential captain pick for you, Gabby Jesus?
Ooh, potential captain pick. Yeah, I think he has to be a candidate for the entirety. Although Mo Salah against Manchester United, incredible record against Manchester United.
Did he score a hat-trick against them last season?
He did. He's kind of standing out for me. Because I think we really need to stop thinking about Manchester United in this sort of old vision where they are this top team. When you look at them on fantasy football, you go, oh, they've got to go away to Manchester United. Going away to Manchester United is an absolute dream at the moment for a player like Mo Salah. So between Mo Salah and Jesus, captains for me.
Would you say, though, having watched Liverpool, in terms of like FPL assets, so Salah obviously got points in game week 1. He didn't look necessarily that great, I think, in game week 2. Obviously never scored in game week 2 in FPL since he joined Liverpool. But are you worried at all that in games like this, I know obviously Man United have been pretty poor and going to Old Trafford is but is there any element of risk captaining Salah? You don't think?
Even against Palace, I thought Liverpool looked really dominant. They look really dominant. I know that Palace
without testing Guaita that much, though.
Yeah, but I think that's credit to Crystal Palace as well. And I think Crystal Palace are, probably a better defensive structure side than Manchester United right now, who are just so flaky. And I'm convinced Salah is going to get a hatful of chances against Manchester United. So it'll be between him and Jesus. But Jesus looks so good.
Sharp.
It was absolute madness that in game week 2 he's the most transferred or one of the most transferred out players. Going into that home fixture against Leicester, I was convinced he was going to score.
Yeah, you were.
when we saw him against Sevilla in pre-season, it was like a hat-trick inside 30-40 minutes. He was so good. I just think his confidence makes him a massive possibility as a captain again this week.
I was obviously asking you the question about Salah, just is there any risk? I mean, I think I'm looking at Mo Salah as my captain pick just because of Man United and because of his form, his record against them. So Haaland's an interesting one because I obviously last week did what I was always going to do, and I think a lot of people did, took out Kane, put in Haaland, and I'm still happy I made that decision because I wanted to do that anyway. I think Kane was lucky in the end. Haaland, had a...
Chelsea fans so rattled by Kane still. Lucky.
Was he lucky?
In the position. He's always in good positions. He should have scored the one-on-one as well. He
goals.
Yeah,
but as in terms of like the way Spurs played, they were pretty poor.
Yeah, Spurs were pretty poor, but they're always poor going away to Stamford Bridge. And now Spurs do have a good run of fixtures.
Yeah, true.
So if you've got hold of Kane, I would potentially just be thinking about keeping Kane. Those 8 touches against Bournemouth were slightly worrying for me. Obviously, he isn't going to be that involved. He's not going to be involved as other forwards, but I don't know. There was a moment when Foden should have squared it. I was about to say, the connection wasn't there.
We have Phil Foden to blame for that because in that position, I understand as an attacking player you want to shoot, but when Haaland is literally like the keeper's, the keeper's always going to make yourself big there. Just play it, and that's a goal, and then an assist, and then everyone's not even talking about whether bringing in Haaland's then almost like a bad idea.
I'm going to stick with Haaland. I'm going to stick with Haaland this week because I think that connection's only going to build. But I think maybe that was just a sign of it is going to take a little while to see the best of Haaland. Right,
we've got some midfielders to look at now, Joe, because there are a surprise name that leads the pack, Rodrigo, and we will get onto him in a second, but I'm initially looking at that and going, Kevin De Bruyne, 20.9% owned, back-to-back returns. He's going to play every game. Do you think that FPL managers should be investing their money in maybe someone like De Bruyne rather than Haaland? If you think it's going to take Haaland a little bit of time to...
It's not the worst idea. I think nobody's going to criticise someone for having Kevin De Bruyne in the team because the return's going to be huge. Just that price point, 12.1, to be... outpricing the likes of Harry Kane and Haaland by 0.5, 0.6, it's a lot for me. And I do believe KDB is going to put up probably second, third most amounts of points across the course of the season. But, the striker areas, those luxury 2 or 3 names, I just can't get away from not having a Kane or a Haaland in my team, I think.
And you really like the look of Pascal Gross, don't you?
I think Pascal Gross is a huge potential differential in there, especially if you've got a Leon Bailey or you've got a Pedro Neto, who, Leon Bailey we've just spoken about as being somebody who's probably going to be quite rotated by Steven Gerrard. And then Pedro Neto, Wolves look a little bit shaky. And obviously Gonzalo Guedes has come into the side as well. I think Pascal Gross, especially if he takes penalties, if we see a penalty from Brighton this weekend and Pascal Gross is taking it, watch his ownership shoot up, because at 5.6 he's cheap.
I was going to say his price has already risen since the start of the season. And you look at those fixtures, West Ham away is not necessarily the greatest of fixtures, but when you look at Leeds at home, Fulham away, Leicester at home, Bournemouth away and Crystal Palace at home.
Opportunities.
They are, and he was quiet. I did think I was at the Brighton-Newcastle game and he was pretty quiet, but he did have a big chance that he should have scored. So he is still getting into the areas that you would want him to, like he did in game week 1 against Man United.
Absolutely. It's the same with like Rodrigo is obviously operating basically as a forward. Yeah. And obviously you want to find midfielders who are operating as forwards to maximise your points in FPL. Yeah. And with Rodrigo pushing higher up the pitch in this sort of new Jesse Marsch system, he's also a bit of a differential. So Rodrigo's still an interesting shout as well. He started so well. Was it 3 goals in 2 games? It's not the worst shout to have him.
It's not. He has got Chelsea next, though, which I think maybe managers would hold off a little bit.
If you've got him, keep him, though.
Yeah, I mean, if you do have him, fair play. Because who would have had Rodrigo at the start of the season? Dejan Kulusevski's another one. Obviously, a big points haul in game week 1. Chelsea way didn't really do much in game week 2, but again, he's one of those players around that mid price bracket, with some big names in there, admittedly. But those two, especially those next 2, Wolves at home, Nottingham Forest away. Is he the sort of player that if you don't have, you should be bringing in? Yeah,
that 8 price range is really interesting, isn't it? I think I would still be sticking. I've got Luis Diaz in that 8 price range. I would be sticking with Luis Diaz. I think he's a slightly more dangerous character, as we saw against Crystal Palace. Absolutely sensational goal, especially with Manchester United up next. I think he's going to tear that Manchester United backline apart. So I'd be very excited about that fixture and the run that follows it.
Look at that. Bournemouth at home, Newcastle at home. Even if it's just for those 2 games, because those are the games that Darwin is going to miss. He'll be back for the derby, Everton away.
Dangerous.
But can you? I can't even right now think about Klopp picking Darwin for the derby, just because of the you know.
I think he will.
He is the sort of player that I think would get up for it in Darwin because he looks like that aggressive, physical sort of player. But just his tempo obviously got tested against Palace, and it's going to get tested even more against Everton. So maybe Luis Diaz is the way to go.
I think he's cheap at 8 as well. I think if you're looking at Mason Mount being around that sort of price, Bukayo Saka being around that sort of price, I don't see a world in which those 2 hit the numbers that I'm expecting Luis Diaz to hit in a far superior side to both of those teams. So for me, I'm taking Luis Diaz at that 8 price point.
Yeah, right. Let's get into, shall we, one of the fixtures of the weekend then. Let's have a look at some assets in Leeds against Chelsea.
All right, let's have a look at the Leeds team then, because we've already spoken a little bit about Rodrigo and that ownership sub 10% still, despite the fact he started the season so well and is basically playing just off of Patrick Bamford. What do you think about Rodrigo? Any murmurings that you would potentially bring him in? Because I do think around that 6 million range is cheap.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And when you look at, Wolves at home, Southampton away, and he's got 22 points in 2 game weeks, which is he's the highest scoring midfielder in FPL so far. Like I said, the Chelsea at home fixture is one that I wouldn't be bringing in Rodrigo for. But the run after that Brighton away, Everton at home, Brentford away, which on paper in FPL is an easy game, but we all know, know very well, Joe, it's a very tough game. And Nottingham Forest at home.
And Man United.
And Man United away, which should be green, really, shouldn't it? That's a lovely run of fixtures for Rodrigo. And now that Patrick Bamford has got a little exclamation mark next to his name. What does that mean for Rodrigo? Does that make him a more appealing asset, or does that make him less appealing?
I don't know. I'm not too sure. It depends what Jesse Marsch chooses to do with him. If Patrick Bamford's not going to be fit, maybe Rodrigo does play a slightly more advanced role and plays through the middle, and then you're basically got a midfield option playing as a striker, which is obviously a huge win. Yeah. But there's still players to come into this side that they've signed this summer, and I do want to talk about another Leeds signing they've brought in, Brendan Aronson, who is at 5.5 right now, and is kind of operating in this right attacking mid, right wing role. So I think he is like a slight whisper at another differential. Brendan Aronson. I do think that Leeds are slightly underrated this season. And if you're looking for cheap midfielders around that sort of 5.5 million range, 6 million range, Rodrigo and Brendan Aronson have obviously started so well. They might be good pickups. Yeah,
like 1.2% owned. He is a real differential. And look, 84 minutes in the first game, 90 minutes in the second game. That's almost guaranteeing he is going to be a starter. And like we say, that run of fixtures for Leeds, if you were ever going to look at transferring in someone like Brendan Aronson, it's probably for this run of games, maybe after the Chelsea game.
After Chelsea.
Talking of, let's have a look at at some of the Chelsea players. Now, the one that stands out to me, of course, I wax lyrical about him every single time he plays for Chelsea, but also that he is an unbelievable FPL player, and that is Reece James.
Crazy.
He was absolutely brilliant against Spurs, and he moved from a right centre-back role when we saw Ruben Loftus-Cheek, who we'll get onto in a second. He was brilliant. He kept Son quiet all game. Obviously didn't get the clean sheet points, but like Trent and Robbo, he's not the sort of player you just have in for clean sheets.
Well, Robbo at 7 million and James at 6.
That's the thing. And with Liverpool not keeping a clean sheet and Trent and Robbo not getting attacking returns in the opening 2 games in fixtures you would expect them to usually, maybe it's time to take out, if you've got both of them, to take out one of Trent or Robbo and look in to get Reece James.
We've already had a bet, haven't we?
Yeah, we have had a bet.
We've had a bet.
We've had
a fantasy Premier League related bet, actually. I'm taking Trent. I think Trent is going to outscore Reece James.
In terms of FPL points. And I think, obviously, Reece James. I'm praying, though, he stays fit, because that's the only thing that I think could let me down here is Reece James's fitness. But an unbelievable... And what stood out to me was when Ruben Loftus-Cheek went... I think he came into midfield.
Yeah.
And Reece James went to right wing back. He put in an unbelievable ball that Havertz should have scored from.
But this is the issue, isn't it? Who's getting on the end of these chances?
And then Reece James slings in. Well, he doesn't need to now. Whereas just get on the end of them himself.
Salah, Luis Diaz coming in.
Yeah. But then obviously he scored as well, Reece James.
He's so dangerous. He's if you haven't got Reece James in your side at 6, what are you doing? Now,
this is the part of the show that Joe has been looking forward to the most. We're going to cover Liverpool against Manchester United. Now, we've spoken about the Liverpool assets quite a lot already. I think the main point to take from that is obviously Luis Diaz being a great asset. Captain Salah, Darwin obviously missing for 3 games, and the Trent and Robbo thing, I think, just quickly is very interesting, and maybe it is time to take one of them out, but I understand why you would give them that Manchester United fixture to go and get some attacking returns.
Absolutely.
But let's turn our attention then to Manchester United, because just looking at their top point scorers so far, Christian Eriksen's top with 4 points.
Yeah, I mean, I would not be touching any Manchester United player in FPL with a barge pole. You just don't know what you're going to get from them. You
haven't scored a goal
yet. From them. I mean, well, it was an own goal. So yeah, let's just.
Technically,
where to start? Like at the back, it's way too shaky to consider because there's just no clean sheets there whatsoever. Maybe in game week 1, some people were thinking, Ten Hag's going to play these really high fullbacks. Shaw and Dalot might be value in there. If you've still got Shaw and Dalot in there, get them out. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised to see Malacia starting on Monday night. In the midfield, it's a similar situation. Who's playing where? Like, you might have had Eriksen in there, but Eriksen now looks like he's going to be used deep. That didn't work at all. And then forwards, I mean, Sancho and Rashford, I would just be holding off right now at their price points, honestly. Like Sancho at over 7, not for me. And then, does Ronaldo play? I could see a world, honestly, on Monday where Ronaldo is dropped and Martial comes straight back into the team if he's fit and available, just because of the off-the-field issues as much as anything. So I wouldn't be touching any Man United players. I would be leaving them well alone, especially for Liverpool.
This is a good stat. Of the 28 players that Man United have registered in FPL, 19 of them have already had a price drop in the first 2 game weeks. Now, Bruno is an interesting one. Everyone sort of thought that maybe without Ronaldo, you'd sort of see the Bruno of when he first signed for Man United.
Can't warrant it at 10. It's like a Sterling price. You can't warrant Bruno Fernandes at 10 when Luis Diaz at 8.
But that is because, you can't. I mean, I don't know why anyone would have Bruno Fernandes. I mean, 2.2. That must be his lowest ever ownership in FPL, because obviously when he first came in, he was a player that you had to have.
Yeah. But I think you want to be looking at Man United assets. If you're desperate to get him in there for some random reason, I like it coming close to October. Like when Man United have at least potentially gelled, signings are in the door, then maybe look at the structure of the team. But just don't have a United player. Don't have them.
Yes, I think the conclusion here
is. Have you still got Rashford?
Yeah, no. I do technically, but he's coming out this game week.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. This is where he will score on Monday night, the winner against Liverpool.
That is it then for Game Week 3. Remember, the deadline is 11 o'clock on Saturday morning. So make sure you have your teams ready. Make sure your transfers are done by then. And of course, make sure your captain is in.
Yes,
who are you captaining?
Salah.
Same.
Salah. I am. Against my own team.
You can't do it. Good luck, and we'll see you all guys next week.